passion, focus, discipline. This is the Zero Excuses podcast. Each and every week, we talk to high-performing, inspirational athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders. We ask powerful questions to extract their tools, strategies, and life lessons for you to crush your excuses, to break out of your comfort zone, and accomplish your ambitious dreams and goals. Here's your host, Kenyon HERE.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Thank you for tuning in. We've got a great guest lined up for you today. We have Mr. Omar Pinto from the Recovery Revolution podcast joining us today. Omar is a fantastic person who has a ton of practical knowledge to share with us today, and he has a very, very inspiring story. He was really down in the dumps and really was into pretty much every substance you can imagine, and he has a great story to share how he was able to climb out of that deep rut that he found himself in, and now he is a entrepreneur who is living the life down in Costa Rica, and now he is helping other folks along the same path that he found himself on. He's helping facilitate them through their journey, and he shares an incredible, like I said, journey today. So definitely grab a pen and paper and take some notes. Before we get into the show, as always, have some quick reminders for you guys. First, don't forget that we still have a couple slots open in the Discipline Deep Dive program. This is already going, so you're going to be hopping in a little bit late, but don't worry, we'll get you all caught up. We record all of our sessions, so you can get caught right up. But if you're interested in joining that, just go to kenyonhere.com/DDD to get signed up. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or send me an email, kenyon.zitska@gmail.com. And also, don't forget to go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review for the show. Appreciate everybody who has done that up to this point. It's really helped out get the word out about the show and helps us reach a wider audience, so appreciate everyone who has done that. Also, while you're there, don't forget to subscribe to the show and share it with a friend or family member who needs to hear the strategies, the conversations, and the tactics that we talk about here on the show. And lastly, I've assembled my top 100 books to build discipline. I've put it together in a single document for you guys to easily access. If you want to access that, just go to kenyonhere.com/books and just pop in your email and you'll have that list instantly pretty much. All right, with all that, let's get into today's conversation with Omar. Omar, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us here on the Zero Excuses podcast. I know we were chatting a little bit here pre-show. I'm really excited to have you on and ready to learn more about you and your journey.
Thank you, Kenyon. Thank you. I'm super excited to be here and appreciate the invitation a lot.
Right on, man. So I know you also are calling in from a place called Costa Rica, and you're getting ready to celebrate your 20th anniversary there. How did you come to live in Costa Rica in the first place?
I came to Costa Rica in August 1999 to open up an online casino and sportsbook. Back when it was kind of like the Wild West over here. A lot of the sportsbook guys in the United States that were concerned with the RICO Act moved over to Costa Rica and just started setting up shop. And then it kind of became like a little bit of a trend. I was a mortgage broker at the time in the City of Industry. So I was a mortgage broker in the City of Industry, California. And I met someone in the course of doing business. And we hit it off. And he asked me if I would consider moving to Costa Rica to set up an online casino and sportsbook. And I'm like, whatever, sure. I'm not married. I don't have any big commitments. I mean, huge backstory from that. But I mean, I did a lot of floundering in my time, constantly trying to figure out where my place was in the world. So I kind of took almost every opportunity as, the universe guiding me in a certain direction. So I kind of adopted at some point the idea of say yes and figure it out later.
Mm.
Before I even had that conceptually in my mind.
Right.
Was there more?
Oh no, go ahead. No, I was just sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought there. And no, I'm really relating to what you're saying there, because I kind of had the same attitude, and that's why it's kind of the light bulbs going off in my brain right now, because I've always been that go-getter. I didn't have that saying in my mind at a young age either, but I was always kind of a go-getter, and hey, let's make it happen. Let's do it. So that's why I was like, oh man, right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, actually, you didn't interrupt. It just kind of like, that uncomfortable radio silence happened. And I'm like, okay, I don't answer the question. Should I just continue?
That's awesome. But that's why I like doing these interviews loose and free, so we can freestyle like this, and it makes for a good conversation. Anyways, no man, it's awesome stuff. But you're currently the host of the Recovery Revolution podcast, and this is exactly why I wanted to have you on. I just found it interesting that you've spent 20 years in Costa Rica, and you're kind of living life on your terms and doing it your way. And, it's an inspiring aspect about yourself that I wanted to highlight up front here. But tell us more about how you came to, start the Recovery Revolution podcast, and what's your backstory there?
Well, segueing from, just part of that backstory of me floundering, a lot of my upbringing was struggle. School was always a struggle for me. So I had a tough time making friends. I had a tough time paying attention in class. I had a tough time having passing grades. I mean, I just barely graduated from high school. I never finished college. School was always a challenge for me. I never kind of quite fit in. I always felt different. And so when I was 16 years old, I had my first drink. And that was the shift that I was looking for. I had no idea it was the shift that I was looking for, but it made me feel comfortable in my own skin. It made me feel like I was a part of. It didn't make me feel different. It actually made me feel included. And I immediately started to make friends. There was a part of my personality, a part of my authenticity that I guess you could say was held captive for a while, because I just didn't quite know how to let that out. A lot of social awkwardness growing up as a kid. I got picked on a lot. I got bullied a lot. And so when I started drinking alcohol, that sort of social awkwardness just disappeared. And, I was funny, and I was gregarious, and I was outgoing, and I was confident. And I was like, yeah, man, this is it. This is what's was missing in my life, and this is exactly what I needed. But what happened is that over the course of time, all that anger, you could say anger, bitterness, resentment that I was holding on to from my childhood, from being picked on and bullied. There's these thoughts that go on in your head when you're a kid and you're in school and you're bullied. And it's almost like payback and vengeance. And I used to watch all these movies about, out for justice and revenge and that kind of a thing. And even today, I still enjoy watching a good revenge movie, and watching the bad guy or the bully, get it in the end. Because I always had these kind of fantasies that it would happen to the kids that would pick on me. It never did. The bullies always thrived in school. But when I started drinking, there was a part of me that started to surface, and that part of me was a bully. I started to pick fights when I would go to parties. I'd be out at bars and somebody would bump into me. And if I was drinking and somebody bumped into me, I would just create this big scene. I can't tell you how many times I got pounded. I got my ass kicked quite a few times. I mean, I can't even remember ever winning a fight.
Mhm.
But it didn't really matter. You know, I just was looking for an opportunity to stand up for myself, to get into someone's face, you know, to fight, to have the courage to fight. Winning and losing was kind of not the point. And so when I moved to Costa Rica, fast forward in 1999, I was already I like I said, I'd already kind of adopted that whole idea of say yes and figure it out later. I was working at a mortgage company, and when I was working at the mortgage company, I met and I was working for a predatory lender. This was pre-bubble. This is pre
Right.
before the crisis hit. So this was, you know, I was in the mortgage business in '97, where anybody would qualify for a loan. And so I had been working for a predatory lender. One of my friends bailed out and branched out on his own. And he was like, "Hey, come with me, man. You could do this." And I was terrified. You know, I was used to always collecting a paycheck.
Mhm.
And he said, "Look, just how much money do you need to survive for the next 6 months? Let me help you put that money aside, and then you know, if you're able to make that kind of money and set it to the side, then you know, come work with me." And so I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense, right? And so he was my first mentor. Somebody took me under his wing. Very smart kid, really good at doing business. And you know, I ended up saving money over the next 6 months, and enough to where if I didn't earn another penny, I could pay all my bills over the next 6 months. And I joined his firm, and I started doing well. And in there, that's where I met you know, a contact. Moved to Costa Rica to open up a casino and sports book, and I was kind of in this groove of like, well, that worked, right? And I made that choice, and I'm doing good here. Costa Rica casino is a lot more money over there. You know, let's give this a chance. It's a new country. And so I moved to Costa Rica, and immediately I got introduced to, you know, cocaine and you know, all the party drugs, you know, ecstasy, and you know, you name it. So I got introduced to a new culture, and I took to it like a duck to water. I also met a beautiful young Costa Rican girl. She was 21, I was 29. And so, you know, we ended up, you know, falling in love and getting married. And in the meantime, I'm running an online casino and sports book, and, you know, spiraling, you know, really bad into drugs and alcohol, um, uh, to the point where I was using daily. I was, you know, disappearing for days on end. She was constantly thinking that, you know, if we moved in together, I would get better. I didn't. If we got married, I would get better. I didn't. If we had a baby, you know, I would get better. I didn't. I just had no stop button. I had this, you know, cocaine made me the ultimate bully, and I was absolutely fearless. No one would mess with me. No one would dare mess with me. And I kind of had, you know, created this almost fictitious life of being a gangster. Like I
Mhm.
truly believed that I had become this sort of like Costa Rica gangster, casino owner, watching too many movies like Goodfella and Casino and Scarface. And I just kind of, you know, adopted one of those personalities. And before I knew it, I lost everything. I mean, I rock bottomed out. I thought I was going to have a heart attack one night. It was. I had gotten to a point where I literally could not use any more drugs. You know, my body couldn't take it anymore. I was having paranoid delusions, from I went to go see a therapist, and from what the therapist was telling me, he was saying I was having drug-induced psychosis, right? I was super paranoid. I thought people were out to get me. I don't know who they were, but you know, I knew they were out to get me, and I was just destroying everything and everyone around me.
So what
Um,
w
eh,
uh,
Go ahead.
So what was the, I guess, what was the turning point for you? What finally snapped you out of this and got you started coming up from rock bottom, I guess?
Well, there was that moment where I had done so much drugs and alcohol that I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And so I got on my knees and I prayed. I found God in that moment. I said, God, I can't do this anymore. So either, take me out of this world or help me get clean. And I remember just giving up. I'd surrendered. It was a complete surrender on my point. I had, my wife was pregnant. My business partners had kicked me out. I was going nowhere. I couldn't stop using drugs. It stopped being fun a long time ago. But I had no way out. So I was like, well, take me out. I prayed for death. I kind of hoped I didn't wake up the next morning. And I'd done a ton of drugs that night. I was like, I'd done too much cocaine and I was like guzzling down this whiskey bottle, trying to come down from the cocaine, smoking tons of weed, popping Tylenol PMs, and then I realized like that I could have been going the other direction. So I might've been inducing like a speedball. I really thought I was going to die. I mean, I was just cocktailing, just putting stuff into my body left and right, trying to normalize myself. And I couldn't do it. I finally passed out and I woke up the next morning. And I remember that the therapist that I had been talking to 10 months prior to told me that I should go to 12-step meetings, that I should go to Narcotics Anonymous. So I did. I got up that morning. I remembered what the therapist had told me 10 months ago, and I blew him off back then. I drove right to his office and I said, I can't stop using. I need help. Can you help me? And he says, let me give you directions to those meetings. I went to that meeting that day. I sat down. I said, my name is Omar. I'm an addict. I need help. And these guys just swarmed around me. They gave me a phone list. They said, keep coming back, man. Just keep coming back. We've all been there. We know exactly what you're going through. We can help you through this. And that's what happened. I came into 12-step recovery a few months after that. My daughter was born. And once my daughter was born, all bets were off. I was done. I was done with the lifestyle. I was done with the drug use. This fire just started burning inside of me. And I knew that this was what I was supposed to be doing. She was my purpose. She was my reason for living. She was what I was destined to do now. She was what God sent me to save my life. And I went all in. I started, working the steps and going to meetings and got a sponsor. And then I started sponsoring other guys, took the program very seriously. 12-step recovery saved my life. It changed my life. And for many years, it sustained my life.
Right on, man. So for those who might be listening to this right now, can you give us a quick overview of what that 12-step process is? Because not everyone is familiar with that. And I know it can be applied to many, many different situations too.
Well, the 12-step process is, I got it without going through all the steps.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just put it this way: the first step is just admitting that you have a problem, that you're powerless over drugs and alcohol. So number one is just coming to believe, not coming to believe. It's accepting that you are powerless over drugs and alcohol, and that you can know that you need help. That's number one. And then number two and number three are more about coming to believe in a power greater than yourself. And it's that spiritual connection, which in many cases is kind of like the first stumbling block for people that come into 12 steps, is kind of adopting a spiritual practice and allowing the concept of God to come into their lives. But 2 and 3 is coming to believe in a power greater than yourself, and then asking Him for help. Right. So that's basically 1, 2, or 3. And then number 4 is doing an inventory. So what you do is you write down all the people, all the resentments you have for people that harmed you, and you go through a complete sort of moral inventory of certain aspects of your life. And then you share this with your sponsor in step 5. And that's usually that's the one where for many of us, that's the turning point. That's when a lot of the freedom comes in, because we've had this kind of skewed view of the world for so long. so much blame, so much anger, so much bitterness and resentment. I mean, what I was holding on to for many years was just my anger and bitterness and resentment towards all the bullies that had picked on me. And, I wrote down all of that stuff, right? Like I got an opportunity to really get that off my chest. And then I got an opportunity to look at my side of each one of these resentments. Like, what role do I play in this scenario, in this resentment? And that was really the big turning point for me, because when you spend your whole life blaming other people, then you adopt the victim role, you adopt victimization, and when you become the victim, then there is no solution, because you're looking outside of yourself. And as soon as you look inward and you take responsibility for whatever role you played, big or small, it removes that external piece.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if I am the problem, then guess what? I'm also the solution. And you just start looking inwardly and you stop looking outwardly.
I want to dig into this part of the process here, because there's, whether you're going through a formal recovery process like you just described, or you are trying to improve your circumstances, whether it's physical fitness, your health, nutrition, your wealth, we all could stand to look in the mirror a lot more and focus inward at whatever our problem is, and stop, like you said, becoming the victim and blaming other people and other things for why we find ourselves in our current circumstances. And I know this is something that you help people with your coaching and on your podcast as well. So what are some what are some specific techniques and tools that we can employ to, I guess, uncover these areas that we're kind of blaming other people, or basically not taking responsibility for things?
Well, in many cases, it's just creating some awareness about how I see myself in this scenario. So what role do you play? Who are you in this particular situation? Are you the victim? Are you the aggressor? Are you the hero in this part of the story?
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, if I'm blaming, it's because I have been victimized. And so once you the first step is just, again, awareness to what role you play. And then it's a series of questions like, how is this making your life better? How is holding on to this resentment? How is holding on to blame making your life better? And what would it look like 5 years from now, still holding on to this? You've been holding on to this for 10 years, 20 years. What would it look like to you if you didn't have this resentment? What would it feel like if you were free from blame? If you were able to take on this responsibility and own it 100%, right? And so the wheels start to kind of turn, because you kind of look at, you kind of see where the wheels start to turn, in the sense of they've never really looked at it in that perspective. And that maybe it wasn't victimization. Maybe it was some sort of a misunderstanding. Maybe if you would have created a different ability, if you had a different ability to communicate, if you knew how to set boundaries, if you knew how to ask for help, if you knew how to, like, there's things that maybe that you didn't learn, and you didn't know better, and maybe they didn't know better. Right. So now you kind of create doubt in the situation, where you kind of like you start to plant seeds of doubt about something that you were so sure about.
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of times I'm so sure that this happened this way. I created this story along with it. This person abused me and I am the victim. And what that means is that I am weak. I am small. I'm not good enough. And then go ahead.
In that you don't have control over the situation. You give up control.
Exactly. So what is the truth? What is the truth? Are you weak? Are you scared? Are you small? Like, what would you do today? What would you say to that person now? Right? What would you say to the 8-year-old version of yourself right now? What did you learn from this? What was great about that moment? Right? Who did you become? And so there's all these, there's a lot of probing questions that come from this, open-ended questions that allow you to think about that situation in a very different way. Because a lot of times, based on that situation, you were forced to become someone. And that person today is a hero. That person is a good father, a good husband, a good entrepreneur, a good businessman. Because from that situation, you were propelled into a certain direction. Who's to say that that wasn't the universe's way of getting you out of your own way? Who's to say that the universe didn't propel you in that direction? This was an opportunity, that life wasn't happening to you, that life was happening for you so that you could learn, you could grow, you could become this person. And typically that's how I like to I call it shaking the tree. Right? Because I have for so many years believed a story. And then so I start to kind of implant, well, what if it was this story? Maybe it was a different story. Could it possibly be this? Oh, I'd never really seen it that way. And a lot of times when people blame their parents, for example, what happens is they become, in many cases, very good parents. And I asked them, okay, so what did you learn from this? Well, basically what I've done is I've done the complete opposite of how I was raised. And how is your relationship today with your children? I have a great relationship with my children. So could you say that your parents actually taught you how to be a good parent? Oh, well, you kind of put it that way.
Yeah, light bulb moment.
Yeah, you have a lot of light bulb moments because you have an opportunity to really, you just flip the script on it. What if it's
Right.
not A? What if it's B? What if you're not looking? What if we just turn it around? What if we just flip it the other way? Right, and ask it in a different context, and then the relief starts to come in.
Yeah, what's popping up in my brain right now is that it sounds like you're getting people to find the good in all situations, no matter what.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely. And in many cases, the holding on process is that they're waiting for justice. Somebody's got to pay for this. They're not getting off. Okay. I'm not letting this thing go. They're not getting off scot-free. Somebody's got to pay. And they're holding on to this assumption, not even an assumption. They're just holding on to this belief system that until justice has been served, I can't let this go. I'm not going to allow this person to just get away with it. And so they are held hostage in a prison of their own making because they choose to hold on to something that most likely will never be resolved the way they want it to. Go ahead.
So is it as simple as just letting go of that, or how do you help people, I guess, resolve that or cure that I guess grudge, for lack of a better term, that's coming to mind?
Okay, well, I will tell you this. I just did a speech in Miami. It was called the healing power of letting go, and it was specifically that situation. One of the things that I was holding on to for a long time was my resentment towards my father. So I didn't speak to my dad for 2 years because when my parents got divorced, it was a super, super nasty divorce. My dad hired this one of the best attorneys in the city, and my mom hired the worst. It was just one of those bad situations. We tried to stay out of it as kids. But when it extended for like 2 years, my sister got involved and realized that my mom had hired a really bad attorney. She went and retained a new attorney, and that attorney resolved things in 2 weeks. It was that quick. And I was so angry at my dad. I wanted to blame him. Plus, when I was growing up, because of my poor grades, because of, how I behaved in school and all that stuff, my dad used to bully me as well. So he was a bit of a bully. He picked on me. So I had grown there. There's this grudge that I had been holding on to from my dad. So my dad and I had an on and off relationship. And so when they got divorced, I blamed him for how nasty it was. And at my sister's wedding, we were together at my sister's wedding. I was about a year sober at the time. My dad was drunk at the wedding, and I was separated from my wife. And at some point, my dad starts to give me marital advice, and I just lost it. I was like, "What the hell? What gives you the right to give me marital advice? Like, what is wrong with you?" Right? And I probably said a whole bunch of other things too, because it was nasty. I was furious, right? And my uncle was sitting there, and he's like, "Hey, take it easy, man. That's your father." And I'm like, "My father, whatever. What does he know about being a husband or a father?" And I walked off, right? And then I didn't speak to my dad for 2 years. And when I was making my amends, my 9th step amends in the 12-step fellowship, and the 9th step is when you make amends to the people you've harmed during the course of your life or during your addiction. And it was time, and my sponsor said, "Well, you got to make amends to your dad." I'm like, "What do I have to make amends to my dad for? He was the one who was a jerk to me, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "This is not about him. This is about you, and it's eating you alive. You're holding on to this, and that anger is eating you alive. This is not for him. This is for you, right? You need to forgive him, and you need to make amends you need to make amends for him for how you behaved at the wedding, right? This is for you, right?" And I put it off, and I put it off, and I put it off. And I just held on to the anger. I wanted to hold on to it. And at the time, I don't even remember what it was like I was expecting to get by holding it on. Was it just me proving a point? Was it just me proving that I was stronger than he was, that I didn't need him? Like all of this, like, well, what was the point of me holding on to it? And then finally, my sponsor had said, what would happen if you got a phone call from your sister and something had happened to your dad? And it hit me, it was one of those open-ended questions. And I said, okay, I will call him. And that night I called my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad." And he's like, "Son?" And I'm like, yeah, Dad. Hey, he's like, "Hey, how are you?" I'm like, I'm good, Dad. I just called him to make amends for that night at the wedding. And he's like, you don't owe me an amends. You don't owe me an amends. I love you, and I would love to see you. And I don't know what happened at that moment. I couldn't tell you where it all went. I couldn't tell you where my anger and bitterness and resentment fell off, let go. You call it whatever it will. It wasn't the action that I took was not in an attempt to let that go. It was an attempt to do what was put in front of me to do. And in the course of doing so, it dropped away. And what I can say is that there was a moment there where unconditional love stepped in. There was a point there that between him and I where the emotional state shifted from anger and resentment to unconditional love, and it superseded all other emotions. It anchored that emotion in that moment, and the other ones dropped off. And so in many cases, what I encourage people to do is to do that first hard step, is to take that first hard step to move towards an uncomfortable situation and allow the natural course of events or intentions or the universe or God or however you want to label it. When you walk into a situation with the right intentions, something magical happens. And that's what happened in that moment. Love, the emotional state of love on both sides was stronger than any anger or bitterness or resentment, and it superseded everything. And then from that moment on, my dad came down to he immediately booked a ticket. He stayed with me for 2 months, and our relationship was never stronger.
Right on, man. That's like giving me goosebumps. Just listen to you recall this story here. Another thing that I'm picking up on here is that whatever it was causing you to hold on to this grudge and resentment. It like as soon as you took that step towards it, it wasn't as, I guess, as bad or as we tend to tell ourselves stories about taking that big step towards something bold, something that's going to be uncomfortable, and when we actually take action on it, it's not necessarily as bad or work out as we kind of make it out to be in our heads. And what was kind of, I guess, preventing you from picking up that the phone in the first place? Was it ego? Was it you hesitating from getting into another argument? What was it there? Were you able to pinpoint
There's
that?
no question about it. It's the ego. The ego is there to protect us. It is our pride. It is our defense mechanism. It is our way of channeling or interpreting a threat, right? So ego is to a certain degree there to protect us, and it's stubborn and it's hard-headed and it's all about me. The ego is all about me and how I was, how this was unfair, how I told my sponsor, I said, I don't know him and he owes me an amends, right? The ego keeps me focusing on me and my needs and my victimization and my hardships and everything horrible that happened to me. And it makes it very difficult for me to see outside of my own scope of reality. It creates this victim bubble where I was harmed, and until you make it right with me, I'm not going to make it right with you. This whole kind of tit for tat kind of a thing. So I personally believe that it is the ego. If you want to, whatever you want, however you want to classify that emotional state of resistance, where you refuse to let go of this justified anger and rage based on an event that happened to you, and not being able to look at how much damage is causing you for holding on to it, right? So yeah, I would say it was ego, pride, ego and pride.
Yeah. So how do we discern between when the ego is actually keeping us safe versus when it's holding us back? How can we start to bolden out that line there? You know what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, because here's the thing. I mean, if I'm, it really at some point it never serves us. Okay, the ego's always going to be there, and it kind of reminds us that we're still human.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't. If I were to think about how I live my life today, and how often I stay in a stubborn state, the ego is the thing that keeps me stubborn and fixated on my point of view. And I think about my wife saying something to me about anything, or someone saying something to me about anything that immediately provokes the ego, where it's like, who do you think you are, kind of a thing, or, that's ridiculous. Right? I can honestly say that today I immediately recognize that the ego is trying to take control of the situation. It is creating a perceived threat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I immediately go, wait a minute. Hold on. This is not a threat. This is your wife trying to communicate with you, and you are turning into a 6-year-old right now, wanting to throw a temper tantrum, right? Because you don't like being criticized or you don't like being called on your own shit. And so I will immediately start to have a internal dialogue challenging this emotional state that's starting to surface. I can feel the resistance. I can feel the pushback. And I immediately go, oh, the ego's coming. Here we go again, right? And I would say that it takes years. You know what? Not necessarily years. Once you've kind of come to terms with the fact that when you start feeling threatened, most of the times it's perceived. It's a perceived threat. It's not a real threat. It's not a saber-toothed tiger is going to come out of the bushes and eat you, which is what the prehistoric body tends to feel about any sort of perceived threat. It doesn't understand language. It just understands a feeling. And the ego pops in to let us know, oh, danger, danger. Somebody is threatening your manhood. Somebody is threatening your belief system, and you have to stand up for yourself. And to be able to recognize that and say, wait a minute. Okay, hold on one second. Is this true? Am I really being threatened right now? Is there any merit whatsoever to what this person's telling me? Could I potentially, possibly learn from what they're trying to tell me? Or is it just my ego trying to protect me or prevent me from growing? I don't know if I answered the question properly. I feel like I deviated there for a minute.
No, but it's this is all awesome stuff, because my next question was going to be like, do you think in our sanitized modern world that our ego is on overdrive because we generally don't have too many physical threats out there anymore compared to 100, 200 years ago?
Oh, listen, man, for many people, the reason why I have a coaching practice, because everybody's on the edge, man. Everybody's literally walking around society like there's a saber-toothed tiger lurking in the bushes everywhere they go. There's a perceived threat everywhere. And a lot of it has to do just with overstimulation. We're just bombarded with overstimulation by social media, by commercials, by the city that we live in, by the cars, by the traffic, by the noise. We're continuously bombarded with all these different sensations, right? So, what you hear, what you see, what you feel, it's overstimulation. So when I'm overly stimulated, the body is feeling all this energy, and it starts. Here's what we hear a lot of. I feel. What am I feeling? Anxious, frustrated, overwhelmed. Anxious, frustrated, overwhelmed, and it's a constant. Right? I just wish I could find peace. I just wish I could just kind of sit still. And it's really this sense of overstimulation that is provoking the ego so much, right? So somebody comes in, look at that guy's suit, man. That's got to be like a $1,200 suit, man. What is he doing? What is he doing to be wearing a $1,200? And he's got a Rolex, And so now I'm looking outside of myself, and there's the ego. Well, I want a $1,200 suit. What do I got to do to get a $1,200 suit? Okay. And I'm constantly comparing myself to others. Then I go onto social media and I'm watching everybody else's life and the social media gallery of photo albums where everyone has this beautiful Facebook life, and you compare your life to everyone else's fabulous Instagram and Facebook life. And it's like, they just went to Machu Picchu. Oh my God, I got to go to Machu Picchu. And so there's this constant sense of overstimulation, and there's danger everywhere that someone is getting ahead of me. Someone's doing better than me. Someone's got a better looking wife than me. Somebody's got a nicer car than me. Somebody's got, more freedom than me. My own sense of self-worth is threatened. My own value system is threatened, right? What I have, I look at what I have, it's not good enough. If what I have isn't good enough, then I'm not good enough. So think about what that rant that I just went through in less than a minute, right? That is what people go through all day long throughout the day, from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed.
Then that's what gets the ego stirred up, and we go into overdrive. And
Yeah.
eh, this is really an interesting, I guess, perspective that not a lot of people realize they're doing to themselves. And backing up to what you said a few moments ago, it's building that self-awareness, becoming emotional, becoming intelligent with our own emotions. So I guess if someone's sitting there listening to this right now and they're like, man, this sounds exactly like me. Like this, I'm a basket case that Omar's kind of describing here. How can we rein that in? What are some steps? I can imagine that unplugging from social media and all the stimuli would be one of the first steps. What are some other more concrete steps that you can recommend to us here?
Well, the first thing really is to recognize what's the story I'm telling myself about the event, whatever that event is.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I will get triggered by an emotion. And then that emotion will trigger a series of thoughts. So for example, I'm driving down the street, somebody cuts me off, and I immediately, it's like, oh, this idiot. Who does he think he is? I'm gonna chase this guy down. Now I'm gonna cut him off, right? Like, doesn't he know who I am? And there is this conversation that starts to play in my head. Whoever's listening to this right now, if you can stop yourself as the story starts, if you can stop and recognize the voices and the dialogue that's starting to play in your head, and stop for a moment and go, wow, that's an interesting conversation I'm having in my head right now. What is it that I'm feeling? What is it that I'm feeling? Okay, I'm feeling anger. This guy just cut me off. For what reason am I feeling angry? Well, because this guy, disrespected me. How did he disrespect you? Oh, well, he cut me off. All right. Okay. Did he do it intentionally? Yeah. Are you sure? No. So what is it that you're really feeling? Maybe scared. Maybe I'm starting to feel, maybe I feel a little scared. Maybe I'm feeling threatened. Maybe I feel like, something could happen to me. And so if I start to move inward instead of outwards, instead of blaming this guy, right? And I start moving inwardly, ask myself, what is it you're really feeling in this moment? Why are you upset that the guy's wearing a Rolex? Oh, because, I want a Rolex, man. I've never been able to afford a Rolex. Okay, so are you jealous of the guy? Okay, well, maybe I'm just jealous of the guy. Well, for what reason are you jealous? Well, because I've always wanted a Rolex, and I just can't afford it. So what is the story you're attaching to that? What's the meaning you're attaching to that? I'm never going to make enough money because I'm not good enough. And so now, how does that make you feel? Well, it makes me feel kind of sad. And see, now all of a sudden I'm moving back into an emotional state and staying out of the stories. The stories will spin out of control, and I can keep a story going, and that story will create another story, and I can do that for days. And some people do that. Some people their whole day is just a series of stories. If I go backwards to identify that emotional state and just go, man, I feel sad. Okay, you feel sad, man. Well, what can we do? What can we do right now to comfort ourselves? Do we need to go sit and go take a walk in the park and observe, nature, have a cup of coffee, call a friend of ours, and kind of get vulnerable and kind of express yourselves? That whole idea of being vulnerable is even more terrifying than admitting that I'm not enough, because talking to someone else about how I'm feeling allows another layer of vulnerability, another layer of fear to come in, because now I'm worried about what somebody else is going to think about me.
Mm.
But this is where the healing begins. The healing begins when I can actually zero in on the emotion and then reach out to someone that I care about the most, somebody that I'm close to, and go, dude, I'm feeling kind of sad right now. Honey, I'm feeling kind of down right now. I could really use a pep talk. You know, I would really love to take you out this weekend. Let's go have a nice dinner at our favorite little restaurant. And now I move out of this sort of either blame game or comparing myself to others or being jealous, envious, angry, bitter, resentful, and start moving into a solution, right? That gets me out of that state. And then moving into gratitude. You know what? I have a great wife, right? We've been married for 10 years and we hardly ever fight. I've got these two beautiful kids, right? And and I have a happy home, right? And you just move backwards instead of constantly seeking this outward validation, that's really all based on what the society deems as socially acceptable.
And it takes you out of the space of waiting for somebody else to do something for you and moves you into something you can actually take action on and change for yourself, and gives you back your power to not be this emotional, I guess I don't want to say train wreck, but like this, you just stop this.
You can.
Yeah.
The people there's listen, we all know people that are just emotionally unstable. We watch them in their inability to manage their emotions effectively, and they're running around with this dialogue that doesn't stop. The minute that I call my wife and I say, hey, let's go out to our favorite restaurant, and you sit down, and she says, why are you sad? You know, I started judging myself. You know, I saw this guy and I was envious of him, and it kind of made me feel bad about myself. And, you know, I've always wanted this, and I don't know, I just let it kind of get carried away. And she can say something like, well, that's not important, you know? And if you want it, then, you know, what do we have to do to get it? What will we need to do? What would be the first step that we need to do to get you closer there? You know, do you need to, you know, get another job? Do you need to ask for promotion? Do you need to get a certification somewhere else? Do we need to move? Now all of a sudden you get into like possible solutions to getting towards a goal you want, instead of, you know, vilifying someone else just because subconsciously you feel bad about yourself. You take your power back the minute you allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Mm. Yeah, that is very powerful. And you know that I'm sitting here taking notes while you're talking, and this is awesome stuff. And I've always thought of myself as emotionally intelligent, but there's some definite takeaways I'm going to implement here. Wow, this is blowing my mind. So
it's all a work in process, Kenyon. It's all a work in process, man. Like, I mean, I just got back from this event. What was it? Not even a week ago. It was on May 5th, you know, and I went up and I gave one of my first public speeches, and, you know, the adrenaline was so high getting into the event that when I came out of it, man, I crashed. Last week, I had one of these moments where I was like, you know, teetering into like this state of sadness, right? And I went right into the first thing, which is to hide. Okay, so the first thing is like, I don't even know what's going on with me right now. I just had this amazing event, right? Everything was like kick ass, and I am feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling, I don't even know how to explain it, but I just want to hide. And so the first few days was just kind of me kind of hiding. And then when I recognized it wasn't going to go away, I was like, okay, now I'm going to have to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it because I feel vulnerable and I feel weak and I feel scared. And boom, I start reaching out to the people that are closest to me. And I'm like, all right, I don't know how this is going to come out, but here it is, right? I'm feeling like hiding. I'm feeling like an imposter. I'm feeling like I don't know what's next. I'm feeling scared. Blah, blah, blah. I get just everything and anything that was coming to my mind. As soon as I start speaking, I can feel it start to lift. I can feel my energy start to change. When I start to let go and turn it over to the people that I trust the most, and then them going, listen, man, I totally get it. I know exactly where you're at. I've been there, right? You gotta be gentle and kind with yourself. Take this time, heal, right? Like you don't have to be 100% all the time, man. It's not sustainable, right? You're always on this like boom. Like for me, I'm a task guy. So it's just like I look at my week and I go, I got this. I got to handle this, and this. Create my to-do list. I got this, and this. I got this. I got to prepare for this. And it's just boom, 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 boom. I don't even think. I just do. And when I'm in a situation where I'm staring at everything that I've got to do and everything seems overwhelming, I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing my edge. Oh my God, oh, my business is going to go under. I'm going to lose everything. Oh my God, yeah. And it's like, whoa. Wow, you need to reach out. You need to make a phone call, brother. You need to talk to your wife. You need to talk to your sponsor. You need to talk to your coach. You need to talk to your mastermind group. And all those things exist in my life, right? I have all of these resources at my disposal. I mean, you really can't have too much personal development, especially in a crisis. And as soon as you start to kind of open up, it changes. So a lot of it is just trusting that if you have the right circle of influence around you, when you open up vulnerably, you will get an answer. You will feel relief.
Let me ask you this. This is more on a functional level, but like, do you kind of have like a playbook set up where like, okay, I'm feeling sad, I reach out to this person, or I'm feeling angry, I reach out to this person. Do you have it broken down like that?
Okay, so here's the beautiful part about the playbook. Okay, and it's called the daily routine.
Mm-hmm.
I have a daily routine. And usually when I get into these funks, I will somehow deviate from the course. It is the most peculiar thing, but I have a get up in the morning, like you heard of the miracle morning, Hal Elrod, right?
Absolutely.
So if for nothing else, I pray in the mornings, I meditate, I journal, and at least those three. Like the other one is visualization and affirmations. I sometimes I'm good with the affirmations, sometimes I'm not. But praying, meditating, and journaling, great with that. Okay, and that's a great jumpstart for the morning, and that sets me off for my day. Okay, and so whenever I'm in a funk mood, that's the time to double down. That's the time to double down. More prayer, more meditation, more journaling. It comes out, but there's something inside. There is this. It's the ego, right? It knows it's got you, and somehow it's like, no, that's never going to work. No, no. Yeah, I know it's worked before, but no, that couldn't be it. That couldn't be it. And so the playbook is staying consistent with your daily routine, which many people will deviate when things go well. See, when things go well, you're like, today I can sleep in a little bit and I won't do my morning routine, and one day turns to 2 days. And then when you get in a jackpot, you freeze like a deer in headlights. Okay, I freeze up like a deer in headlights. Now, like I told you, I got in, I got back. I started to spiral downwards. I stopped doing all the stuff that normally keeps me centered, especially a solid morning routine. Once I recognized it, I immediately went into action, and I went and, like I said, I called my sponsor. There's the playbook. When all else fails, I go to one of my AA meetings or NA meetings. I call my sponsor. I speak to my wife. That's usually the playbook for me. By the time I'm done with those activities, I've already kind of like the marbles have started moving around, right? Like the energy's changing, okay? And the ego starts to lose power because now it's no longer alone. It doesn't have me by itself. I'm talking to my sponsor. He's like, dude, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. That's all. It's fantasy land. Okay. Get back into your daily routine. Next thing I talked to my wife. She's like, hey, I haven't noticed you haven't been doing your morning routine, have you? Oh God. Yes, I know. It's not nothing's perfect. We're going to fail and we're going to fall down and we're going to get, and as a matter of fact, you're going to feel like you're in quicksand. That's how I felt last week. I even expressed it at one of my mastermind meetings. I feel like I'm in quicksand, dude. I feel like I can't move. I feel like I'm walking in quicksand. Like, that's how I felt last week. That's totally how I felt last week. And it's just telling you, it's just letting you know that you reached a certain point. This is one of my masterminds. She said, you reach a certain point of success that you've never reached before. And your body and your mind want to go back to its set point, wants to go back to its comfort zone. It's not comfortable in excelling. So you have a set point. You have a comfort zone. You just broke through that. And subconsciously it's going, oh, we got to get back. We're too far out. How are we going to sustain this? Now we got to do another one. And I'm like, oh my God, that totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. A lot of it is just effective communication with the people that you care about the most. You kind of got to go back and forth and like unlock that energy. They've got to, in there is the answer. And as soon as they say it and we resonate with it, it's like, oh, dude, that totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. All right. That's it. I'm going to go do 20 push-ups, right? I'm getting out of this state. Okay, enough. I'm going to go drink 2 liters of water. Okay, let's go. All right. I'm going to listen. Today I listened to 3 guided meditations. Like now it's like whatever it takes. But you have to recognize that you're going to have dips. You don't have to stay there.
Oh yeah. Like this is really hitting a nail on the head for me because I've experienced success with this podcast and other areas of my life. And what you described is exactly the feeling that I felt as soon as I achieved that success. Either it was me like, I've reached a milestone and I didn't have a way for myself to actually reward myself. So instead I would take my foot off the accelerator and regress. So, I know this is kind of, I'm kind of comparing an experience I had to what you just described here, but do you have, I guess, these rewards set up within kind of your goal structure, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it?
I'm so glad you brought it up because I forgot to. That is a critical facet to success. Is bringing the concept of reward and celebration, right? Because in many cases, that doesn't even get factored into the equation. We are constantly in, like I was telling you, the task-oriented mode. Like, okay, I have this goal. All right, boom, I accomplished the goal. And like you said, I reached a certain level of success and I forgot to celebrate it. And I just kind of went right past it. Okay, so what's the next thing? And so life becomes about what's the next thing. And you're not enjoying, right, the fruits of your labor, so to speak, right? So what I've done is my wife and I are always setting up some kind of like date night, or we do like weekend excursions for the specific purpose of celebrating when something cool happens. Right. So like, for example, whenever I get a new client, I'm like, ooh, got a new client. Woo! Celebration. Okay. We're going to go to our favorite restaurant. And so every time I get a new client, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have this special dish. Right? And so having that kind of programmed in is not only a motivating factor, but it's also like a manifesting tool that allows you to bring more clients into your existence. It creates more abundance when I'm focusing on abundance, when I'm focusing on reward. Because otherwise, then, oh, I got another client. Okay, all right, great. I got a client. Okay, now I got to get another client. Okay, great. Okay, I got that client. Okay, now I got to get another client. Okay, and after a while, it's like, why am I doing this? What is what? I forgot what my why is. I forgot what my purpose is in doing this. And that is when people start to get bored. And I don't even know if I would say they call it getting irritable, restless, and discontent. And you start to find ways to reward yourself, but you're not even recognizing what that is. That's where drugs, alcohol, smoking, sugar, all that stuff comes into play.
Yeah. And wow, I hope people are taking notes like I am, because I've got like 10 pages, well, maybe not 10, but pretty damn close to it, pages of notes here, because I have since started setting up some rewards and things like that. I mean, you and I kind of run in a similar circle, so that's kind of one of the key facets of setting goals, is like, how are you going to reward yourself? And yes. I can't stress that enough. Is like, hey, you know what? It's not enough to set a goal or set a milestone. You have to find a way to celebrate it and almost gamify it and make it fun. And there's so many entrepreneurs out there that are just, they're hustling, they're grinding, and that sounds miserable to me. Like, you
absolutely
have to enjoy
miserable.
the journey. That you have to enjoy the journey. And yeah, there's a lot to be said about hard work, but hard work for just hard work's sake sounds horrible. But Omar,
It's terrible.
Yeah. But we are starting to run short on time here, and I would love to keep this going all night long. But we simply don't have, you and I simply don't have that amount of time here. But I wanted to leave a few minutes here at the end to let you talk about how people can get in touch with you. If this conversation has piqued their interest, how can they maybe work with you and get more of this?
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. The easiest way to get in touch with me is just to go to my website. It's omarpinto.com. Couldn't be any simpler. So omarpinto.com. That's how you can reach out to me. You can read about my coaching services, my mastermind group, my membership community for people in recovery. All my social media, you can connect with me from there. Anyone interested in coaching, I offer a free consultation so we can see if we're a right fit for each other. But you can find me on social media easily. Omar Pinto, really good looking, bald guy with glasses, goatee, you can't miss him.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll definitely drop this in the show notes, and appreciate your time here tonight, and look forward to keeping in touch, and let me know if there's anything I can do for you, man.
Oh, thank you, Kenyon. Oh, yeah. We got to schedule you on my show.
Absolutely. Would love to. And,
all right, brother.
And we'll make that happen here. Just send me your scheduling link.
Done deal. Okay.
All righty, man. Thanks again.
Thank you, brother. Have a great evening.
Thank you for tuning in to the Zero Excuses podcast. Join the conversation at kenyonzitska.com in our Facebook group. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to our show. We'll talk to you next week. And always remember, results, not excuses.